this is my partner Clay, and today we'll be firing off our model 1841 6-pound smoothbore field gun. But before I get to that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the uniforms we're wearing and why we would have this cannon here. Now, the uniform we're wearing is that of the 23rd Infantry Regiment in about the 1880s. Now, the 23rd Infantry Companies E and K were stationed here at Fort Mackinac to help work with the national park, which was Mackinac National Park, America's second national park. They pretty much just wore these uniforms on parade to impress the tourists or for certain higher level officers coming to inspect the post for formal occasions, and that's about it. These are not battlefield uniforms. But these, you may hear me say these are uniforms from the 1880s. This is an 1841 field cannon, making this cannon about 40 years old for the time period we're representing. Now that is antiquated by Army standards. It is one smooth bore, meaning that the inside is just about as smooth as the outside, meaning there's no spin put on the cannonball, it's not really going that far. And it is a muzzle loader, meaning you have to load it from the front. By the 1880s, they have what's known as breech loading artillery, meaning you just pop open the back, shove your round in there, and then you're good to fire. So why did they have this antiquated cannon? Well, because Mackinac is a national park, and they don't really need anything better for that. The Army is still just using these for salute shots, which is just a blank, which is just a piece of gunpowder wrapped in cloth. There's no cannonball. We're not trying to sink the Shepler's they're not trying to sink the ferries. They're not trying to sink the civilian boats. They're just firing these off to celebrate events. They fire these salute shots twice a day, once when the flag goes up, and once in the evening when the flag goes down. On federal holidays, such as the 4th of July or Decoration Day, or as we know it today, Memorial Day, they'd fire what's known as a national salute. They'd fire one shot for each state in the Union. At the time, there were 38. So they'd fire these off at the best time of all, the crack of dawn, which is lovely for the tourists downtown. But unfortunately, we don't have enough powder for a national salute today. However, I figured in honor of your visit to Fort Mackinac today, we'd fire off a salute shot for y'all. How's that sound? Woo! We'll work on it. So I'm going to start off by putting my thumb over the touch hole on the back of the cannon. This is known as thumb stalling, and it'll help prevent any air from escaping our gun, while Clay takes the auger and just fishes out any debris from inside the cannon. Or cloth from any previous firing. And it looks like we're good. So next he's going to grab the wet sponge and dip it in the bucket underneath the gun. The water is going to help put out any ember and also suck any air from outside the cannon. This is going to help create a vacuum which will put out any embers. We'll know a vacuum is created if when he removes the sponge it creates a thwomp noise like that. Next he's going to grab a historically inaccurate 5-ounce tinfoil charge. Historically, they would have used something known as muslin cloth. However, that has a tendency to burn, and I don't think those good people down there in Marquette Park want a firestorm on their hands. He's going to use the other end to ram that down, the other end of the wet sponge to ram that down. It's known as a rammer, and make sure that it's firmly seated at the end of the gun. All right, and then next, he's going to put that away, and we're going to roll the gun up into the firing position. 1, 2, 3. Alright. Next he's going to take a brass spike called a gimlet and poke a hole through that tinfoil charge. This is going to expose our gunpowder so that it can be set off by our next piece of equipment called a friction primer. Now, a friction primer is a small brass tube that has a bit of a chemical known as mercury of fulminate on it. This mercury of fulminate is a chemical similar to that on the end of a strike anywhere match. It's incredibly susceptible to friction, so when we pull the pin on it, it creates a spark, and that'll set off our gunpowder. Now, he's putting a lanyard on the friction primer that he's going to use to set it off, and it's at this point, I must warn you all, this is a cannon. It's a little bit loud. So I encourage you to either plug your ears or pull out your cameras, whatever you prioritize. And there's only 2 commands to fire the cannon. They are ready, fire! So salute shot.
Wow.
If you have any questions, me and Clay will be up here cleaning.